Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. It is the season, it is fall. And you know what fall brings? Parent teacher conferences. So, what we wanted to do today is just have a conversation about, kind of like what to expect and how to maybe guide the conversation along. So, as a parent, you get what you need out of the conference. And then what do you do with that information later? So, what I'd love to do is introduce you to our guest today. Meet Sherri Khan. Hi, Sherri.
Hello, Stacy. Good
Hello.
to be with you.
Now, Sherri is the founder of Concrantz and Associates, a clinic in Illinois, speech and OT, and is now part of the Positive Development family. So, welcome, welcome.
And happy to be part of the organization. We also have mental health at the clinic.
Right.
Well,
Yep.
uh,
Yep.
so I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to do my first live stream with you guys.
Woohoo! Well, we'll have fun today. And, for anyone watching, I just want to invite you, if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to drop them in the comments. We will be taking questions. And if we don't get to it, while we're live talking, we'll make sure to answer them later. So no worries. All right, so let's dig in and set the scene because Jeepers, things have changed a lot over the past couple years when it comes to school and education, and how school was delivered is drastically different. So yeah, I just wondered from your perspective, what are you seeing? What kind of changes have you seen in education?
My colleague and friend, a psychologist from North Carolina, Dr. Emily King, says it's not 2019 anymore. Our kids are experiencing a different way of being educated
Mhm.
in 2021. So nothing that you were comfortable with before in maybe parent teacher conferences, finding out how your child is doing in school, or just dropping into your school to say hi to your child. That's just not happening because of the pandemic and the chance of exposure for the children and safety first. But the
Yeah.
kids are back in school. And so, how do we as parents try to navigate what that first conference or the second one after the first of the year is going to feel like for you?
Hmm.
It's the first time you're going to be meeting the the teacher,
Hmm.
but not in the same way you've met them before.
No, I know, for me, I scheduled conferences, so for one of my kids, and it's 10-minute Zoom calls, that are just back to back to back to back with all the different teachers. And on one hand, I kind of love it because it's just so efficient and I
Right?
don't have to go anywhere. And yeah, so like scheduling wise, it's nice, but you do miss out kind of being in the classroom and even how the classroom's set up. Like, what is that like these
What
days?
does it look like? I mean, each school district is using their own COVID and CDC guidelines
Hmm.
and the directives from their school board of what's going to make the classroom safe,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So if you haven't seen any pictures and you can't go into the building, you don't have an idea of what your child's learning space is like. I mean, I like to think about the fact of when you and I were in school, Stacy,
Hmm.
we didn't deal with anything like a pandemic, nor did my children. And yet, they walked back and forth to school. They took a bus to school. They weren't wearing masks. They weren't sitting behind plastic. They didn't have to squirt Purell on themselves. And everything. Recess and lunchtime. Those are the times the kids got to go out. But now
Hmm.
they still have a curriculum and state guidelines to follow for grade levels. I mean, this is enormous pressure on teachers and on parents. I when you were talking about setting up appointments, I can't help but remember that I think you used to have a 15 or 20-minute conference, but there used to be chairs lined outside the couple of
Yeah,
lockers, and you would meet people and that you hadn't seen in a while, or you'd make play dates for your child. But
totally.
those kind of social interventions, I mean, or social moments, aren't even there for us anymore. So we
Yeah, I remember, like, planning Halloween parties
exactly
back when you could have a
we
Halloween
were the
party.
room mother. I mean,
Yeah, the room mother stuff, we
please
would be
think
talking
about
about
that
that.
because then you're around, and I'm not going to say gossip doesn't get carried away, but you don't have a sense of what's going on in the classroom.
The community of it.
I used to see all these
Yeah.
moms at Starbucks, talking about what they're going to do for the full school year for
Mhm.
their children. I was very active in my children's PTA for lots of reasons, and I think I shared them with Stacy because I always wanted to get to know the teachers and get to know what the activities looked like and the classrooms looked like. I don't know about you guys, but when you walk down a grade school and see all the art and the
Yes.
noise, it's a great
Yeah.
hum in the classroom, and that's missing, and it's probably missing from your children too.
Yeah.
There's not that much to look at as much anymore, or music.
Oh
Interesting.
gosh.
Coming up.
Don't get me
Right.
started on the
So,
arts.
right.
Yeah.
So those things are missing, and the PTA used to do all of these things,
Yeah.
the extras, to get money. But when you think about a conference, particularly your first one, if it's kindergarten or first grade, I mean, who doesn't want to know how's my kid doing? How
Yeah.
does he compare to the rest of everybody in the classroom? Some
Mhm.
parents are saying, I just want my kid right in the middle. You remember the bell curve when you were in school,
Yeah.
right? Just in the middle,
Mhm.
right? Or I think my child is gifted. So what are you doing to help that
Yeah.
piece of it? But what about my child that takes a little bit longer to learn?
Mhm.
How
Or who
is
takes longer to process things.
right?
Yeah.
Because in every single classroom, there is a variety of children with different learning styles. I mean, even for those of you listening, each one of us has a different learning style. I tend to learn more auditorily than visually. I don't know how Stacy
Yeah,
likes
I'm
to.
a visual.
Well, yeah, I could tell that because of
Yeah.
all of your all of your marketing stuff. But when I get in a car and I have to navigate, thank heavens for GPS, because otherwise I get anxious.
Yeah.
So
And for me, it's like I wanna see the map. If I see the map, I'm good.
I'd look
Yeah,
at a map and
totally.
I'd have to have Xanax.
Yeah. Now imagine that, times I mean, how many kids in a classroom? That's always been like fascinating to me.
Right.
How do you teach 24, 26, who knows, kids in a classroom at all the different levels and
But teachers
ah,
are exquisite at that.
yeah.
I'm
Wow.
always in awe of walking into a regular first grade classroom or a regular
Mhm.
fourth grade classroom and being in awe of how these children work independently and can
Mm,
look up on the board and see what's next and move forward. I
yeah.
think teachers are feeling that differently now. I was sharing an article with Stacy the other day in the Atlantic, and it was talking about the effect of masking
Yeah.
is having on our kids. And these are kids that, I mean, most of our kids, if you look around or in any store or anything, children are wearing masks. I'm in awe of these kiddos
Mhm.
that it's just part of their daily living. But think about when someone wants to play with you and you can't hear as well what they say, or if
Mhm.
the teacher is working with someone else and you've asked the teacher for help, and in another 2019, the teacher might turn around and say, "Oh, I'll get to you in a minute." But this time she might not have heard it or he might not have heard it.
Mhm.
And so masks are really having an effect on our children's being able to have social gaze and respond to each other, and even bullying is happening.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, time is gonna tell,
how that
how
works.
this is all what the impacts are gonna be. But
Yep,
here we are now.
right.
And,
And looking at conference,
so
right, but
yeah,
even talking
conferences are
about them,
coming. And one question I was curious about is because I know teachers like have the agenda. They have like all the work, bundled up and they're gonna share kind of the progress. But as a parent, I'm wondering about what like goals or expectations I should have or how should I be feeling? Because I know like this can be anxiety producing heading into it.
well, I think you from the get-go on your parents' open house in the first, I think, week of school,
Mhm.
every district does it differently. They usually tell you what their expectations are,
Mhm.
and I hope that it has turned into every child is we have to match their learning to their developmental profile because we all learn differently, like we were just talking about. And I think from the beginning of your conference, or maybe you might have some questions that you want to email to the teacher ahead of time.
Well,
If
that's a
you
good
have
idea.
10 minutes, it's not a whole lot to find out when your whole world revolves around your child. But the mom has 20 other families, the teacher has 20 other families to talk with.
Mhm.
So I would be, if you have something burning that you really want to talk to the teacher about, I would give it up to her, that ask her to find time. So that's one thing I would do is,
That's a good tip.
right, make sure that if there's something that you really would like an answer to, particularly if a parent is worried that their child might be struggling in learning, let's ask the teacher, what could I do? Who could I talk to?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes on these meetings, if a child is getting speech therapy or they might be a learning person, that person will be on the telehealth call with them.
Yeah.
And since they're usually the case managers, they probably will be able to answer those questions too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other thing you want to know is, where does my child fit in the class? You don't have to give me a number, but is he struggling? Is the mask hard for him? Is it difficult for him to follow directions in the class? Um, are you happy with his attention? Can he follow the day? Can he make the transitions? Particularly for the itty bitties, the
Mm-hmm.
kindergarten and first grade, because the first conference is really, they haven't even gotten into first grade curriculum yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, just so you know, they're still working on being school kids, and
Mm-hmm.
doing some group work. And that's something else that's important. Is for,
Mm-hmm.
depending upon the school district, working in groups is a skill they're going to be working on for their entire educational life. And it's really important.
Yeah.
And so that's important to say, well, how, he's been so isolated because of the pandemic. How is that working for him? Because
Mm-hmm.
he likes his own time. My child likes to do this. My daughter's chatty. Is she chatty in the classroom too?
Yeah. I'm fascinated to know that.
And make it, I think when we're honest about our own feelings about things we notice at home, we're delighted to hear, nope, when he's in school, he's fabulous. But when he comes home, you get all the business. Sorry. You
Yeah.
get all the business because they've been working hard all day. You
Right.
do you see him better in the morning than in the afternoon?
Mm.
When are the toughest subjects happening? Usually there's a literacy block and a math block in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it works in the K through 3, up to 3, right?
Yep.
And there's so much work now because kindergarten is full day, at least in Illinois. In most
Mm-hmm.
parts of Illinois, it is. And Illinois has lots and lots of school districts.
Mm-hmm.
The mandate is such that kids have some very early reading skills by the time they come into first grade.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so, how is my child keeping pace? Um, if for some of you, your child might not have ever gone to preschool,
Mm-hmm.
right? Depending
Yeah.
upon where you live, what state you live in. If
Mm-hmm.
you're from a more of a rural community, this may not be an experience, and it might be taking them longer. There's all sorts of late bloomers. I
Mm-hmm.
always say to families that I work with, it's not over till it's over, even if
Yeah.
you're 33.
Yeah, that is, I think, really good advice, because you hear this feedback like, oh my gosh, my child may not be doing X, Y,
Right,
or Z, and the fear or
right.
yeah can really set in.
Yeah, I think it's and the school district is usually reluctant to give services unless you're coming from kindergarten or an early
Mhm.
childhood program or some kind of special education services to say when you come into kindergarten or first grade, yep, we're going to just get this going. The child has an individual educational plan, it will follow them. But if it's the first time the concern is being raised, then you can sit on it. You can think about it, and you can reach out to the teacher to have a different conversation. The 10 minutes on your first conference may not be enough time.
Mm,
How, it's okay to walk away because, as I've mentioned to Stacy and other people, when you go in to have a meeting about your child, first of all, you can only listen for 10 minutes.
yeah.
So it's good that it's 10 minutes. The
Hmm.
other thing is you listen with your heart. You don't listen with your head.
Mm,
Who can listen to what your child is doing with your head? You can't, because
hmm.
your heart's always going to go and get in the way. It's your baby.
Yeah.
Again, even if they're 16, it's your baby.
Yeah.
And so well, you want to make sure that when you're listening to the conference, you want to, pick out the key issues that you hear. And if you get to go with a significant other, your spouse, your mom or your dad, whoever can go with you,
Taking notes. For me, I always bring a journal to any school meeting.
I used to tape
Yeah.
because I couldn't write because I'm always so interested in reading someone's facial affect and emotional. I mean, it's what I do every day with young children. So
Mhm.
it was really important to me that I have this relationship because the relationship is everything, right? The
Yeah.
relationship with the teacher, the relationship with the school staff, anybody that's involved with your child. And so we always have to sort of think to ourselves, um, if the teacher is raising any concerns, then you want to hear them, but maybe this is time for another conversation when if it's only you going. I think it always helps to have, it sometimes takes a village. So if your husband can't come in the evening, then arrange a different time. For
Mhm.
example, I'm meeting with a family tonight, and usually I don't do late afternoon meetings, but this mom said to me, my husband is in school and he works, and she was 8 months pregnant, and I sort of, even though I'm way too old, I sort of put myself in her shoes and I said, I'll meet you at 5:30 tonight.
Yeah.
Because why wouldn't you want
Yeah.
to happen? If they want to talk about more, if your child has some challenges, you might ask for the principal to join you.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that's someone that you've had a relationship with,
Mhm.
that's okay too. If you
Mhm.
feel like you have other questions, that 10 minutes is, even though it's the most you can hear,
So fast.
it 10 minutes is, because at first you're saying hi, how are you, you're doing all that,
Mhm.
but you come in saying, all right, tell me three things.
Yeah. Tell
Tell me
me everything about my
Yeah,
child.
right. Tell
Yeah.
me three things
Not gonna happen.
that is looking really good for him, and then you can tell me three things he can't
Yeah,
do.
I like the positive and negative. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like I love, what are you seeing strength wise? Yeah. Yeah.
only
And
because those are
okay.
three nuggets you're going home with,
Yeah.
right? And you can do that. And I'm not saying most of you will have very positive kinds of feedback with your classroom teacher, um, and and I feel like that the expectations in the first conference and first time is always about we're just starting,
Yeah.
right?
And to me, it's really about establishing that partnership with the teacher.
Right.
So because that's going to be important all year long.
I think that's such an excellent point because I remember learning from my own child. I don't know how this has been with some of your older children, Stacy. Is that teachers that I didn't feel were a good fit necessarily for my child,
Hmm.
but my kid would say they like this person,
Hmm.
and I'd say, "Okay, Sherry, be quiet,"
Yeah.
because there was some kind of connection. And I also always want to respect the fact that my child connects with other uh, adults that can support their learning.
Yeah.
And to myself is take a step back, Sherry.
Hmm.
The way your initial feelings are not your kids' initial feelings on that. So
Yeah.
if you can get over that, I mean, it's hard because conferences are hard.
Yeah.
Um, I
And you
remember.
don't want to be that parent, you
No.
know. Um,
You really are there? Yeah. But you want what's right for your
yeah.
child. And I applaud. I do a lot of advocacy in schools. And I always say to the parents, I come in, we do meetings and we talk about all sorts of things. And then I meet with the school because I think collaboration is everything. And
Hmm.
I meet with the schools and we go in and we all work together so then the parents can see that this is a collaboration that can work together.
Hmm.
Greatest jobs. Someone said to me, "Well, this parent is doing so well, they won't need you." And I went, "I
Hmm.
get such joy if a parent says to me, 'I got this, Sherry.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that.'" And then I think, I mean, what could be better when a parent feels confident and supported by the staff
Yeah.
to do that?
Yeah. And here's a thought. So, because beginning of the school year, you're hearing what you know about the teacher, about the
Mhm.
classroom from your child, and of course, you're going to believe everything you hear. But there might be a yes and situation. But I know that, like, based on feedback, you could come into that initial conversation like like sit across the table from each other, right? And just
Exactly.
that adversarial, okay, this is what I'm hearing. But mentally for me, the picture that I always liked was that you were like you're both sitting on the same side of the table and you're both like looking at what's in front of you and you're workshopping it together.
That's a great example because, you know, in days 2019,
Hmm.
you would be talking to the parents during recess or during pickup. If you've ever been at pickup in a school, all the mothers are sort of schmoozing with one another and and hearing, well, I don't like this person and so forth. I would say turn that noise off.
Yeah.
You've got to turn that off and give each teacher a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, it might come out that everything they said was true, or it didn't happen for my child.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
So I think, again, particularly for the itty bitties, I call my
Hmm.
K12s itty bitties, because it's still it's very different than when you're going to a conference for an older child.
Hmm.
3, 4, and 5 is different because there's very specific work and there's levels where kids are going, they're moving classes and so forth, because then you're meeting with more people, right?
So let's actually talk about developmental levels and things that we should be looking for. Are there any good resources out there that you know of okay, like here are the milestones my kid should be hitting, and yeah,
Well,
how do you know
I
what
think we're
good
sort of
good
moving away from that,
is?
um, because each school district, depending upon where you live, will make a difference in terms of what their expectations are.
Mm,
And so I want to be really clear that by the end of second grade, um, is a very good predictor if how a child is going to be successful in 3, 4, and 5,
mm,
because the level of content changes.
mhm,
And so when we look at their written language, their reading language, their understanding of the use of mathematical skills, or and they go into the sciences, like regular science, physical science, and they go into
mhm,
social studies. And there are so many other demands on what we call metacognitive thinking,
mhm,
that those are different kind of conferences, right? And then you might see people, if your kids are in different levels, it doesn't matter what level they're in, that
mhm.
though all those people will come to the table and you still may not get what you need. Again, I say, what is the most compelling thing you want to talk about, and send a little note ahead of
Yeah,
time.
prepare ahead of time. I think that's brilliant. I
Yeah,
wish I
if
had done
you
that.
yeah, if you prep ahead of time,
Mhm.
it will ease your anxiety.
Yeah.
It's sort of like writing it down, taking a deep breath. I live Stacy brought up the notepad. I live off the reminders on my phone, on my cell phone.
Mhm.
Because when you're done, it says task completed, and I feel so great when I when I can delete that task. Um,
Yeah.
but
I
that
have a checkbox.
Right.
I'm a big
But
checkbox
just
person.
writing down questions, and I would also ask who, your the child's father, your spouse, a grandparent that might be babysitting for them, an aunt,
Mhm.
a babysitter, what are you seeing at home or at pickup? These are the things that you want answers to.
Yeah.
But
Okay. So let's say there are some challenges and some things like you've been start worrying about at home. And let's say your teacher has maybe confirmed some of them. What do you do with that?
Well, most teachers would bring you in to talk about um, some questions they're having about the child's learning profile,
Mhm.
emotional anxiety. Unfortunately, our kids have anxiety. The pandemic has really raised that. And we've watched that for the last almost 2 years. And so that is not unusual with the pandemic. So,
Mhm.
in every school, there's guidance counselors, there's social work, school social workers, and so forth. And I would call the teacher and say, "This is what we're noticing when we're coming home, and we can't get any homework done
Oh
at
boy,
all,
I've been
right?"
there. Yeah.
And right, so we've all experienced the homework dilemma,
Yeah.
and you want to come in and talk with them, and maybe you want to bring it up at the conference time to set a date then and there,
Mhm.
but maybe you would like the school social worker to be in, either talk with you privately or bring the classroom teacher in. Are
Mhm.
you seeing what we're seeing at home?
Yeah.
And how can we help him? Because it's painful to watch your child have anxiety.
Hmm.
For those of you that have experienced anxiety, you know what it feels like not to be able to organize yourself and move forward. It's very debilitating. And our kids are babies. I mean that in the most loving way. And there's so many wonderful tools out there now,
Hmm.
to be able to do that. And there's ways for us to modify work. And
Right.
there's so many academic ways to do that. So I would say don't wait. Information is powerful. You don't have to agree with everything you hear. But if you hear something that strikes a little lightning bolt in you, get more information.
Mm-hmm.
You can always say, I think it's a good idea. We agree, but at this time, we're not going to do anything on it. But let's keep talking about it.
Yeah.
The school is equipped to provide a continuum of services for any behavioral um, component that's going on in your child's life. You can also go privately if you
Yeah.
don't want the school involved. I don't recommend that. I recommend collaboration unless you're
Hmm.
going to homeschool. And that's a different, that we could talk about
Yeah.
on a whole different level.
A
But
whole other thing. Yeah. Cause I mean, I know of, just some friends along the way, mom friends along the way, that had to try really hard, to get services. So anyway, two things I think of. One is you need to be persistent.
persistent is
You need to keep your cool.
mhm.
And then, a third thing I think lesson for me through all my years was not to blindly trust the experts. I'm sorry to say that,
Well,
but
you're not hurting my feelings because I would always say, I think there is nothing better than a parent's gut.
yeah,
You know when your child is struggling. How do you not? I mean, all of us know, and all of us have seen our children struggle. To say that everybody has a smooth ride isn't accurate.
yeah, totally.
The challenge is, you know, when do we start the process of that? And And I always say, get more information. If you live in the state of Illinois and you need an advocate at school, like you were talking about, Stacy,
Yeah.
there are people. If you know someone that's working in special services, or a grandparent that was a teacher, or an aunt, or someone that knows someone, find someone you can trust.
Hmm.
You know, to be your voice. Because when I said to you before, it is hard to hear things that your child is not being successful in. And
Hmm.
then to be able to make a coherent comment back, because our eyes well up. How could we not
Yeah.
hear
Oh
our child
gosh.
isn't suffering? I can't remember when I haven't, I cry when one of our kiddos makes this big jump in
Mhm.
therapy, and
Yeah.
there's nothing that makes me happier than that. But I also cry when parents are hearing for the first time that their child might have a learning disability, or
Hmm.
they might have a diagnosis of autism, or they might have an anxiety disorder. What we have to do is not let the diagnosis drive how we feel about our child. And I
Yes.
wish I could tell you that in eight sessions of working with someone that everything's going to be okay. But that just isn't the way development works, because you can't teach development. I wish you could, because
Mhm.
I think I'd be retired already, and I'm
Hey.
not. And
Yeah.
and but your child can only move as fast as they can. Development is uneven. I mean, think about how you learn.
Hmm.
Think about your own school days, and so forth. So I want us to be able to celebrate our child's who they are, and know
Hmm.
that in spite of everything else, kids continue to develop. You
Yeah.
you can't stop development. Do services help? Of course they do, if you go to the right people.
Yeah.
That's another thing. You have
Mm.
to find the right people doing the best work. So just here's a pet peeve of mine. There's a difference between remediating and tutoring. So if a parent says to me, well, my son is getting tutored so he can keep up in math. My question to the parent is, in tutoring, it's just maintaining where the child is at, right?
Hmm.
All
Yeah.
right. It's not it, and if the child has a definite challenge with processing mathematical concepts and then applying that and being able to describe those concepts um, in a more complex way, then you might need to be remediated. All right. And that's an expert that does that. So tutoring is great if
Hmm.
you're giving a boost up for the summer or during the school year, but it's only keeping the children, maintained where they are. But a lot of children need remediation, which means they might need other strategies using different parts of their brain to still get to the same point.
Hmm.
And so I like us to know that there's all different learning ways.
Yeah.
Again, think about the way you learned in school.
Hmm.
It's really important. And the reason I think second grade is so important is that we assume by the end of second grade that literacy and writing skills are set.
Hmm.
Okay. And that's
Hmm.
why you can go on to the complex academics at that time. We
Yeah.
see the most children diagnosed with language learning disabilities as they move into third grade.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Because and the same thing goes for a diagnosis like autism as well, Stacy,
Hmm.
because so many kids who are really verbal and they have to get up to more complex thinking, sometimes kids between 7 and 12, that's why the needle moved.
Hmm.
It's because more kids were getting evaluated during that period. I'm trying to think of when the 1 in 68 number came out. I can't remember the exact date. But
Hmm.
now we're very good at evaluating.
Yeah.
And we understand the process of kids. But again, just because you have a diagnosis or you have a label that says you can get services in school is is only one part of your child.
Yeah.
And you want the teacher and I want you to be able to celebrate those parts because there is nothing that makes me happier when a child finds their way in spite of their learning differences.
Yeah.
Neurodivergence is great. I
Yeah.
I think I mentioned to Stacy the other day that my office has big windows on the back of it, and in the back there's this huge retention pond, and the geese come all different times of the day, and we there for the first time in the 6 years we've been here, there was a white goose. So I said at our staff meeting that we've finally become neurodivergent because this goose was a little bit slower than the others. The others were moving on, and they move in their little gander as they walk across the street to see who else threw something out on the grass from the retention pond. And here, this white goose is being left out, and I'm all over it because once it's like a dog with a bone. Why I couldn't stop. I said we all have to take a picture of this white goose, but every child in every classroom
Hmm.
has their own unique learning style,
Yeah.
and there is yes, some kids are going to be brighter than other kids.
It's okay.
It's
Yeah.
okay. Our job is to find that the sparkle. I don't want
Yes.
to, I don't want to lose the gleam that we had in 2019 because of
Mm.
what kids are having to adjust to. I just
Yeah.
there's nothing better than seeing a gleam in your kid's eye. And that would be my hope for everybody is that
Mhm.
parent conferences, you're just getting information. Keep what's meaningful, toss out the rest. If it's something important, go back and get someone to talk to you about it. The worst you can say is, okay, thank you for that. I heard what you said. We're going to wait, or let's get on this.
Yes.
That's my best wish for you all.
Yeah, and on that note, I mean, I honestly, there have been so many things throughout our conversation. Like, I think yeah, you might want to go back and rewatch some of this because, like, the idea of questions that you can ask ahead of time, there was some gold in there, and so I'd really encourage you to listen
Yeah.
back. So we're coming up to the end of our time. Actually, I think we kind of ran out of time for Q&A, which is totally fine. Anyone, please leave your questions though in the comments. We will get in there and answer them. Or, feel free to reach out to us. You can check out positivedevelopment.com and we will definitely help and get back to you. But thank you for joining us, Sherri. Thank you for sharing. And we are going to do this again because
Oh,
this is too
I
much
look,
fun.
I look forward to it. It was fun.
Yeah.
I knew you were
Awesome.
going to be good at this.
All right, everyone. Well, take care. Have a great
Bye.
week and
Nice
have
to
a
see
great
you.
conference.
Bye.
Bye.